Yeah, I've been teaching here for about a year, teaching guitar, and leading worship for about 6-7 years now. And I currently play at Ginghamsburg Church, kind of the hired gun on a weekly basis. They have me out there, and I lead worship there sometimes too. So love what God has allowed me to do as a musician, and love to be here and teach you guys today. Looking forward to this. So, as Dr. O'Neill said, we will start off with a lecture, I guess, on the subject of improvisation, give some demonstrations, and try to get you guys participating as much as I can. And if you want to stick around towards the end, then we will do some improvisations if you like. I know I was asking you guys how many of you brought your instruments, and some of you said, there she is, there's my instrument. I'm like, impressive with the roadies. And anybody's main instrument or only instrument voice? Okay, we got some vocalists, cool. I want to... Not main, but you, yeah. Yeah, I should say, how many of you are maybe secondary is your voice? Because a lot of times we think about improvisation, we think about it within a vocal context, instrument context, but I'll cover some ideas for singing as well. As we talk about improvisation, most of what, or a lot of what we will discuss applies to songwriting as well. How many of you write music? Cool, most of you do. So, as I said, a lot of this, the stuff we just talk about here applies. And the reason that would be is because one definition of improvisation is it's the fastest form of songwriting, right? So, you're doing it right on the fly, so you don't have a choice for any pre-planning, that's for sure. Other definitions, anybody want to give me an answer to the question as to how you would define improvisation? How would you define that? We wait. I can turn the guitar amp up to 11 like Spinal Tap. It only goes up to 10, but unfortunately, dang it, I'll have to wait till the next version comes out. But of course, improvisation is just making things up, right, on the fly. In fact, the fact that I'm not a news reader like on Fox News, reading every word I say to you, I'm improvising. So we improvise in our lives, so it's a natural thing. So yeah, it's the fastest form of songwriting. I don't want you to get hung up on just improvising music from scratch, which is something we want to be able to do. But we might also improvise pre-written songs. We might improvise the structure of a pre-written song. We might just improvise within the boundaries of a pre-written song, meaning that we might provide variation to it. Like vocalists do descants, and instrumentalists might do just a lead melody or a fill. Drummers putting a fill wherever they spontaneously find it to be appropriate, hopefully, and on the one, right, in time. So, all that's forms of improvisation. So I don't want to limit ourselves to just thinking about, a song, writing it from scratch, I guess, on the fly. But we will do that as well. One thing about improvisation is it's planning for unexpected situations. And when I say that, I'm thinking within the church context. A great example I'll give you is I think a couple weekends at Ginghamsburg, we were, we got 5 services, and it's like a factory because you're doing the same service 5 times. And there was one portion of that service where we were playing a special song while we were giving away Bibles to all the children in the church. And like the 4th service, that line of children was huge. Way too many. The worship leader was looking out at that line like, oh man, we're going to end the song before the line comes through. So improvisation time. So he turned to us and he started giving us signals, and we knew it was coming. Be flexible. So he's like, we're going to go back to the bridge, and I knew what that meant. You're going to, repeat the last half of the whole song again. And he turned to me, I'm playing lead guitar, and he said, stand by for guitar solo. I'm like, oh man, what's going to happen here? So I had no idea what I'm going to be soloing over, and it was Israel Houghton, and if you know anything about Houghton, he's different, he's different, he's modal a little bit, so I didn't know if it was going to be E major or E minor chord progression of the song, but we pulled it off. But, there's an example within the church context where we had to improvise, and we were able to time it very well. Can you guys think of any other examples within church context, what worship leader or band members otherwise, where you might find yourself needing to improvise? Maybe you've lived one of these situations you want to share. Yes. What is your name? I'm learning names around here. Ryan.
Not now, but a while back, we had 2 services going, well 3, but there was a traditional, and that kind of overlapped our contemporary service, and so the pastor preached at the traditional, and sometimes he was kind of late coming to the contemporary. So, the music kind of, one time we had one of our friends was actually leading, and he was kind of late in coming, or he just got done sooner than he thought he would. So he was kind of improvising some music until the pastor showed up.
Oh man, that's scary. And sometimes you have to improvise the sermon, have that sermon in your back pocket. So, anybody else?
Yeah.
And your name is?
Zach.
Zach.
At my church back home, the youth worship leader was in the habit of, you pick a song once, but you never stick to it. And so you pick a song in the key of A, and you'd end up in all these different songs that start in the key of A, and you pick a chorus or a bridge, and you sing that for a while, and then you go to another song, and so you'd end up having no idea where the list was going, and I'm playing a keyboard going, okay, let's just hold on that A pad, and let's just try and see what, I'm trying to look from behind to see what chord he's playing. To play guitar too, so that was fun.
So you didn't have the chord charts for these songs?
No.
Good luck.
Yeah, I mean...
Are you Pentecostal?
Yeah, a little Pentecostal.
And I don't say that with any condescension. I grew up Pentecostal and was playing in Pentecostal charismatic churches. So if any of you have that background, you'll understand where improvisation is probably birthed within the church. They purposefully don't plan the set list and blame it on the Holy Spirit. But it really taught me a lot. I mean, I had a worship leader that I played under who loved to modulate. Every time he gave you a thumbs up, it didn't mean you're doing a good job. It meant, look out, you're going up a half step. And the way you had to do that, the way you had to do that was you had to go to the 5 chord of the destination key. So like in music, that's a music theory idea. So if I'm playing maybe a song in the key of C contemporary, let's see, end of Shout to the Lord. So nothing compares. I'm going to go to D flat, okay? So to go to D flat, I'll have to hit the 5 chord in the key of the G flat, which is A flat. Shout to the Lord. And he would do that 12 times. So I learned my national numbering system, because you learn it or you die, okay? And we'll talk about that more as I talk about music theory, guys. But there's a lot of potential to improvise within the church. And some other examples that I can think of where I've had to do it as a worship leader, or it's nice to be able to do. If you are playing as background music while there's an altar call, or during a prayer, great place to do that. You can play Just As I Am and I Surrender All. It's kind of cliched. Maybe you're just going blank on anything else creative. So a lot of times, we'll just improvise. And that's nice because what you can do is you can try to make the chord progressions and the melodies and the dynamics all fit the message. So you can really flow in the spirit here. And later I'll touch on, I might as well just mention it now. Colossians 3:16, as well as I think Ephesians 5:19 talks about there being psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs. And theologians are saying that psalms were when they would sing, the church would sing scripture, basically. And it might have just been exclusively the book of Psalms, I'm not sure. But then hymns would have been like choruses, really. They were singing praises to the word, to God, but they didn't necessarily have to be word for word out of scripture. And spiritual songs, the word there for spirit is pneuma, which Jesus references the spirit when he says that the spirit is like the wind and you don't know where it comes and where it's going to go. I see in that, and a lot of other theologians have said that they see that as being improvisation. And it really makes sense that this spontaneous worship would just burst forth. You see that also in the Psalms where it says, sing to the Lord a new song. So the newest form of a song, of course, would be improvisation. So you can see the potential that you would have within the church to do that. Imagine that you're a worship leader, and the specialists who's supposed to do a song for offertory tells you, "I'm sorry." It's a mental service starts. They say, "Oh, I'm sorry. I've got a family emergency and I got to run." Okay, and if you're a good planner as a worship leader, you have a song in your back pocket. Maybe you pull that song out of your back pocket and you say, "Oh man, this is on the set list, so I don't want to do it twice. I'm in trouble." Well, if you can improvise, then that would be an option, okay? So improvisation can save you in many scenarios, and believe me, it's saved me too. Sometimes it's just a matter of, you want to keep things fresh, and it's nice to be able to do that. Why don't I just stop here for a second and just give you a little improv on the guitar. I brought my amp today. I brought a device called a looper. And for those of you who aren't familiar with it, this is an old one. It's called a boomerang, and there's several variations of these things. And what it does is it records me playing on the spot. Okay, so it's really convenient. A lot of times I use this acoustic guitar. I use it as when I'm leading worship, and not just for improvisation. It's nice to fatten up the band and stuff. But what I'll do with it is I'll probably play some chord progressions or some riffs and things. And at some point, I'll let it loose. And when it plays my part for me, I might play over top of that. And you're not limited as a guitarist to use these, although these are most popular for guitarists. But I don't see why an electric violinist or keyboard player or whoever might not be able to use something like this. So let's see if I can... Okay, I got some sound. Let's see what I can do here. Gosh, I'm like on the spot, just flip the switch, Greg, and improvise, It's like almost unnatural. Let me see what I can do here. We'll just try to come up with an improv. I'm trying to think what to do. There's so many acquired tastes in music, and stuff like when I'm hearing myself playing that, a lot of jazz is coming out. And I don't want to get you hung up, because when we think of improv, we think of jazz. I don't want to get you hung up on that, especially if you haven't acquired that taste. Improvisation goes, you can do this in all kinds of different styles, and hopefully I'll expand out a little later. I'm usually probably better being more worshipful with improvisation on the piano or acoustic. So we'll do some more of that stuff later. I see two sources of inspiration with improvisation, and again, this applies to songwriting. And one source is merely trying to play what you hear in what I call the jukebox of your head, okay? it's trying to hear a melody up there, and to get that translated to your fingers. If voice is your main instrument, this is not an impediment, okay? It's the least of your worries, right? But for instrumentalists, that doesn't necessarily come naturally. And I think a lot of times we raise the bar too far or too high, and we think, unless I have perfect pitch, I'm useless. I'm not going to be able to do that. Well, there are two types of ears, and I don't mean pierced versus non-pierced, or big versus the small ears. There are two types of ears that you can have in music, and one is what we think of as perfect pitch, and that is where not only can you play anything that you hear in your head or on the radio, or etc., you also might have the ability to tune an instrument without a pitch reference, or hear that airplane overhead and say that engine's humming at B natural. Okay, it's a little sharp. Doppler effects hitting it. It's coming towards me. Okay, there's C. Literally, I've heard that people with perfect pitch can do that. They associate colors with pitches. Fantastic trick if you can do that, guys. You'll be a hit at the dinner party. But I have relative pitch, and with relative pitch, although I can't do that little parlor trick, like the person with perfect pitch, I can play any melody, if I can execute it, that I would hear also. And relative pitches, the bar is not set so high. You got to be able to hear the distances between notes. So it's a matter of hearing intervals. When I was a little kid, we had a piano in the living room, and my mom played, and I was like 6, 7 years old, and I thought those notes were laid out randomly. And one day, I made a discovery that they weren't laid out randomly. I found out, wow, you mean to tell me that as I move to the right, the notes get higher, and as you go to the left, they get lower. And I had already been visualizing melodies, the tessituras, as they say, of the melodies going up and down, not like we'd see on a score. As soon as I figured that out, that the notes were laid out sequentially, from that day forward, I started making up little melodies on the piano, and my parents, started getting me into piano lessons. I was born with that. I can't boast about it if I wanted to, because I didn't do one single thing to earn it, and that's something that God gave to me. There's so much to be said about developing your ear, and that would take a long class in and of itself. But let me just suggest this thing. If you need to develop your ear, if you want to do that, I would recommend that you sing what you play. Sing what you practice. So, got the guitar handy. If I'm practicing my scales, this could be on any instrument, of course. If I'm practicing a D major scale, I want to be doing la, 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 la. I need to be singing and playing. And by doing that, I think you're drawing a connection between your fingers and what you're hearing up here, okay? And going beyond that, singing your exercises, if you're practicing arpeggios, la, 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 la. I think it'll go a long way to help you develop that ear. A lot of ear training will come just by experience, just by playing. For instance, although I don't have perfect pitch, I can probably, especially now I just played the instrument, but I can usually hum an E, because I've heard the open E for 20-some years, so I usually can do that and find it. So experiences take you a great distance with developing your ears, guys. Also, you'd want to try to imitate melodies that you hear on the radio, or favorite songs that you might hear that you want to learn, maybe the first few notes of the Star Spangled Banner, we know as la 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 la, right? So let's take it one note at a time, okay? I need to find la. Now I go to my instrument and compare the note that I'm going to play to the note I just sang. La. And obviously there's a difference, and I need to ask myself, is that note lower or higher than what I'm singing, what I'm targeting? What is it? Is that note lower or higher? La. Someone. It's lower, right. So I need to move in the direction that my instrument allows me to move it up, right? So, la, there it is. Sometimes we fool ourselves and our voice adjusts to the instrument. We'll sing the wrong note. But you got to keep constant on that note. Keep the faith. Keep that vision. So I found my first note. Now I got to find my second one. La, la, so it's going down. Can we all hear that? If we can't, we might not be in the right class. So you can hear those two notes going down. I just need to find how far is it going down, okay? And I know it's a boring, systematic process. Hopefully it's not boring you, but it's a slow process, and you'll get better at it, okay? So it's not someplace you stay. It's a means to an end. As I said, there's so much more we can say about developing your ear, but even if you're good at playing what you hear in your head, you need, that's not so impressive if the quality of what's in that jukebox in your head is dung. You know what I mean? They say you are what you eat, right? Well, you are what you listen to also. So, we're all a product of our influences, we like it or not. So, I don't know what kind of music you're listening to. Listen to diverse music, first of all, I'd suggest. You might be into one style, whether it's rock or jazz or whatever, or classical, but make sure you branch out and listen to that country or that emu or whatever. I know, that's an animal, isn't it? I don't know, I kind of like the way they sound. Is it emo? Well, I'm so unhip.
So you want us to listen to nature CDs?
Emo. What's that?
Nature CDs?
Nature CDs, yeah. John Cage. Maybe not John Cage, but but yeah, you want with streaming internet radio, we have no excuse, guys. So I would. In fact, that Z93 station 92.9 now plays everything. They're not stuck in one genre. So yeah, find a way to listen to everything, but listen to people who do it really well. There's so many contemporary Christian artists, if I can be frank with you, who are out there making a buck, but they're kind of formulaic, to be honest. Try to stay away from that and find the guys and the girls who are doing it really, really well and hone in on that. Become cutting edge. But beyond your influences, I think our mood and our mentality, your disposition, your emotions, all are big factors in the quality of what you come up with up in, I keep calling the jukebox of our heads. When I first started improvising, it was like hard for me to just flip a switch and turn it on. I wasn't really feeling inspired. Something that helps to bring that inspiration up is to meditate upon Scripture. Find some Scripture that's a favorite of yours. Like one of my favorites is Psalm 37:4. Delight yourself in the Lord, and He will give you your heart's desire. Take a Scripture, like I've been born and raised in Christianity, so John 3:16 is kind of old to me, but it's powerful. But the problem is, I've heard it so many times, So, but what helps me is I'll go and go to the Message or a Scripture, a translation that preserves the meaning, but it's worded fresh to me. And if I meditate upon that and it gets me, my fires burning and inspires me, music or ideas will flow out of that. I saw Prince Caspian recently out of the Narnia series. Anybody seen that movie? And every time they show the lion, and I'm not a crier, but it brought me to tears. Just because I know, I've read C.S. Lewis, big fan, and I know why he presents Christ as the lion and all that goes into that, and how Lucy, the little girl, she was able to come to him like we would go up to a pet, and she hugged him. Everybody else would bow, but she could just go up to him like a friend. See, Aaron, and nice meeting you. And find those thoughts, find those experiences in your life. Maybe it was getting dumped by the girlfriend or boyfriend, God forbid, right? And it's a sad place that you were at in your life. Maybe you're still there. But maybe that would bring forth a song. I know when my uncle died, I sat down at the piano and just started improvising this thing. It was kind of in a minor key, and I was inspired by that. So, the more you can bring yourself into a mood, is what I'm trying to say, you can have vision. Let the Scriptures inspire you. Let your relationship with God inspire you and all your past experiences. It'll help the quality of what's up here. And then it becomes important for you to be able to play by ear or make that connection between those melodies and what you are playing. Sometimes what you might want to do is you might say, okay, I'm going to improvise and think of what it would sound like for me to be on the beach, okay? I can kind of hear just off the top of my head, and this is the wrong instrument, but I kind of hear that reggae thing going, kind of that thing. Because I'm out in the Caribbean, and I have a hard time talking and playing at the same time, right? But I can hear that right off the bat, and either Kenny Chesney or Jimmy Buffett's going to come in any time and start picking up the melody, right? So, you want to get into that mental mode. The second source of inspiration that people don't think about for improvisation is music theory. And most people think of music theory as only being something that you would use after the fact. You hear some song and you go analyze it so you can become a better musician and understand what's under the hood of this music thing. But I dare say that you can use music theory as a source of your inspiration. And where that's really helpful is when the ideas up here are just no longer coming. And it doesn't matter what tricks I try to do. And I'm trying to get myself into that mode. And I'm thinking about how my dog died 3 years ago because I need to play something that's kind of sad. And it's just not happening, Or I'm trying to be moved by, this repentance at this altar call. But it's just not happening. But maybe I know a moving chord progression. Maybe I know a mode that I would say fits the scenario. For instance, I'll just go off the top of my head, and I always take a risk to do this stuff. But if I was doing an altar call, let's move to the piano just for something different. Keep your attention if I switch instruments, right? So maybe there's an altar call happening, and I'm out of ideas. I just don't hear anything up here. But one mode that moves me is the Dorian mode. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with modes, and you don't have to understand it, at every detail to appreciate what I'm going to do. But I'm just going to improvise using the notes of the Dorian mode because I know enough music theory to know that it's going to give some connotations that would be appropriate maybe for an altar call. It's going to be contemplative, but it's not as dark as normal minor scales. So it's going to still have the melodic thing. I always think John Williams in Star Wars, for instance, I think the theme to Star Wars, I think they use the Dorian. So let's see what happens. I'm just going to make it up. Altar call thing. So we'll do A Dorian. And some pastors don't even like you using minor keys, so you got to be careful. Most don't know. Tell them it's major. Repent later. Kind of has a John Tesh feel, doesn't it? I didn't mean to do that. I told you it's more worshipful on the piano. Otherwise, it'd be a straight A minor chord progression. Because if you know your music theory, you can see my hands on the piano, for you piano players. A minor is all white keys, so I keep going in that F sharp minor instead. Now there I'm in F natural. You're not stuck in one mode either, okay? And I didn't purely think Dorian. That mode kind of jump-started me, and then I started hearing stuff in my head. And after that, just look out. But the mode will jumpstart, or the music theory can jumpstart you. Okay. So the one thing I like about using music theory as a source of inspiration is it'll help you come up with ideas that you didn't hear up here. So your mind surprises yourself with the improvisation. On guitar, one thing I'll do occasionally is I'll be jamming, let's say, in the key of G, and I'll throw a diminished arpeggio either on the 2nd, 4th, sharp 5, or 7th scale degrees. You guys got that? You don't need to. But my music theory knowledge tells me that if I throw that diminished arp over one of those, rooted over one of those notes, that it will work. There's one outside note, the sharp 5, but otherwise it will work. Now, I don't have in my head right now what that'll sound like. So I'm going to take a little bit of a risk, but I know it'll work. Let's hear what it'll sound like. And exactly the order I play that arpeggio in is totally up to me. And that's the thing about improvisation, is you got all these choices, and some people that overwhelms them. But I want you to have a positive attitude and say, no, that's a good thing, okay? We're not stuck to the dots anymore. So let me loop through a G major chord progression and throw that arp over there. And let's see if we like it or not. So let's see. The guitarist's favorite tune is turning that peg and tuning, right? This is not the improv. Okay, let's see what we can do. So in the key of G. That's an ostinato, okay? I always translate from classical people. So there we go with the G vamp. Here comes the loop. I can always say, look, Mom, no hands, right? I'll tell you a story about this in a second when I was leading worship. Let me do the improv. One of the things at the time. Okay, so I can play G major. I'm not doing the arp yet. I'm going to go to the sharp 5, which is the 5th note in the key of G, which is what? What note is that? Somebody. D sharp, not quick enough. Wake up. So we'll go to D sharp, and I'm going to play a D sharp diminished. So far I'm all bluesed up, okay? Okay, I'll do, here it comes. Now I gotta be honest, the first time I played that just now, that didn't sound right to me. So I'm like, oh quick, you're screwing up. Make sure to resolve it. And that's a key to improvisation, and especially when you're thinking leads, and I say leads, you know, piano, that doesn't have to be, you know, it could be any instrument that you can play melodies over, right? You always want to think in terms of the consonance and the dissonance of the music. You always want to be able to give the music tension and release, because that's what music's about. So I heard those notes I picked had tension, which I expected that to be the case. So I made sure not to leave it hanging, because that's the worst thing you can do. Make sure you resolve your parts at some point. So that was my courtesy to you. There's nothing worse than just ending the song in the key of G. Thank you very much. Good night, Cedarville. And then hanging it there. Nobody likes that. Please resolve your song, right? Yeah. Okay. The quick story about the looper. As a worship leader, I was leading worship with the headset mic. And, yeah, I know, you always feel like you're going to, I feel like I'm at McDonald's and going to take somebody's order and ask them if they want to biggie-size that worship. But I'm sitting there with that headset on, playing acoustic, and all of a sudden it starts to fall off during the song. Don't want to distract the congregation and stop the song, but it's coming down. So quickly, I loop my chord progression on the looper, and then repeat the chorus, hit record. Now I'm no hands, and I'm doing this while I'm leading the song. You ought to see the sound guys. Oh, man. They thought I was Milli Vanilli. I was. Both of them at the same time. By the way, I heard they lip synced at the national anthem at the Super Bowl. Did you guys hear about that?
I recorded it because the acoustics were just.
You've got the story right. Yeah. When I first heard that, I was like, oh man, that's a ripoff. And then I heard the NFL actually requires it. So anyhow, that's interesting. So yeah, they require that to prevent those Roseanne Barr situations. Remember when she was? No, you don't want to remember that. It's like flashbacks. Okay. Please, no, not again, mommy. Okay. Where was I? We're talking. So music theory can inspire you, your improvisations. And I'll talk a little more about that when I talk about varying songs. We'll talk about like chord substitutions and how you can use that in your improvisations as well. In fact, let me just do that right now. There's a song called All To You, Lincoln Brewster. You guys know that song? Maybe you will when I play it. It's like now, that song on the pre-chorus goes to a 4 chord, and it's a minor chord. So I'm in the key of E. It's going to go to an A minor. And let me see if I can find that place. It goes, and my voice is shot today, I got a cold. But it's like, I don't know the words, so that's even worse. Right there, it does an A minor, okay? Now, theoretically, if I'm improvising, I could, if you know my music theory, I know there's some chord substitutions I can do with that. And if the song's old to me, and it's not, this is a newer song, just the first thing I could think of, I might use my music, go into my music theory lockbox and say, let's use some substitutions for that 4 minor. Well, some of those substitutions might be, I could go to the 2 chord and make it diminished, okay? So let's see how that sounds. Whether or not we love it is one thing, but it'll work, okay? So let's sit here. I'm going to go to an F sharp minor there instead. So it'd be, you are my everything. Yeah, that's not bad. I just rewrote the song. Now, I've got to be careful if I'm doing this with vocalists, because I'm changing one vocalist's harmony. So, be careful there. There's another chord sub I could have done. I could have went a whole step below my key. So I'm in the key of E. I could have went to D natural and played a major chord, or even up to a dominant 9 would work. Let's hear what that would sound like. So, because I have no idea what that's going to sound like yet. Okay, this is not stuff in my head. I'm showing you this is stuff I've theorized. Let's hear it. So it goes. That's really a radical push, isn't it? But theoretically, I can do that. Okay. Maybe that D dominant 9 was too much. Let's just try a D triad. So I could do. It's different, okay? I do that type of thing, especially on old hat songs. Like, when I say old hat, like God of Wonders is old or contemporary music in that, dogs, and what they say dog life is every 7 years, right? So in worship music, a song's 10 years, it's ancient, right? In contemporary, at least. So I'll take a song like God of Wonders and do chord substitutions. I'm pulling from my music theory and partly on what I hear. So let's hear what that would sound like with some chord subs. And by the way, as I do this, most of what I'm doing is moving up or down 2 notes to a substitutionary chord, okay? So like if I was aiming for a B flat major chord and I'm in the key of F, I think is what I'm going to do it in, I might drop to a G, which is 2 notes below B flat, and that would be a minor chord, because it's a 2 chord and 2s are minor. Sometimes this stuff is harder to explain than to do, right? So let's just hear it. Go to the chorus if I can find it. So, you are holy, holy, the universe declares your majesty. You are holy, holy, Lord of heaven and earth. A little low for me, but Lord of heaven and earth. Now back to the normal part, but another song I do it on, by the way, is Nothing But the Blood, because everybody's heard that one, been around forever, right? So let me see how that one would work. Let's see. Oh, precious is the flow that makes me white as snow. That's a clunker. Nothing but the blood of Jesus. in one sense, there's no rules. In another sense, you want to preserve the melodies for your congregation. As soon as you start messing with the melody, you've got a new song there. And again, like we said before, be careful about vocal harmonies, because you can throw them off. By the way, everything I'm showing you so far is easier to execute as an individual musician. But I want to talk about later, we will discuss how you would improvise within a band context. I was soloing earlier over a chord progression, guitar with the looper. Just say something about that. Improvisation, whether you play, I don't know, horn, violin, sax, piano, single note stuff. If you're the one that the worship leader points to you and says, take a solo, you might be like, what do I do? Well, you want to know, it helps to know the key of the song. Know your hands, right? Yeah. Can't argue with that one. I know. I teach at the university. So yeah, I just say the obvious, right? So yeah, you want to know the key of the song that you're in, and otherwise just call it jazz, right? They say if you hit a wrong note, hit it again, and people think it's jazz. So you're in the key of E major, and you want to play. You got 7 notes to choose from. Play. You got. That's your playground. Okay. You got the freedom to play out of those 7 notes. The analogy I use, my guitar students have heard this, is it's like a game of Scrabble. Okay. Somebody says, here's 7 letters, form any word you can. You got all these choices, right? Well, even more so in music. Here's 7 notes. Anything can happen. Okay. On the piano, it's so easy to see, so I return to it for a second, because the piano draws that picture in the key of C major. Because in the key of C, it's all the white keys. So I can improvise. I know what notes to play just by staying away from those black keys, if I'm in the key of C. So let's see what that would look like. Try to do something more upbeat this time, just for something different. Scales on whatever instrument that is, the easier it is to improvise. I try to teach my guitar students to see those white keys on the fretboard and for all 12 keys. And now that's daunting. It does not happen in one lesson. Otherwise, they're underpaying me, that's for sure. It can happen, but it does take a long time. My violin teacher used to have us tape our violin fingerboard. Anybody play violin, cello, viola? They'd have us do that because there's no fret markings. But there's a guitar also that called an Optec fretlight. And yeah, you're familiar with it. We've probably discussed it. You have to plug in with a battery so you feel like you're having a toy. But the nice thing is you tell what key you're in, and then all the dots for the key light up on the fretboard. Yeah, cool thing. So you could do that trick on the guitar, okay? Now, I wasn't simply saying, okay, I'm in a key, and there's my 7 notes to choose from. There was some other things I was doing also, guys. I was conscious of that tension release thing I talked about earlier. So if I played something that sounded, maybe unintentionally because I was being a little too random, and I heard it go to tension, then I made sure to be aware of that and to finish my sentence, to bring it to a period, right? Makes sense? So I tried to find ways to release it. And that, different chords you're playing over, there are different note points for that release. The general guideline is, if I'm playing over a C chord, which is C, E, and G, those 3 notes are definitely my resting points for sure. So if I land my melody on one of those 3, I'm going to hear resting points. You can land it on another note and maybe imply a bigger chord, by the way, and that can work too. But you got to be conscious of that. A second thing that I did, I don't know if you noticed, was I found a melody that was kind of thematic, and I kind of made a pattern out of it. I don't know if I remember it exactly, but it was like something like that, okay? I'm playing it differently this time than I did last time. Don't ask me to play the same thing twice. Be a lousy classical player, wouldn't I? But the point is to try to keep the listener's ear through some repetition and by being thematic, okay? The best books, the best movies are thematic. They will tend to bring up something in the story at one point to grab your attention, and then you know that's going to come up later, maybe with some variation. So if you can do that with your improvisations, it can really make a difference. Would anybody, well, I know you brought your guitar. Would you, you want to do a little improv with me?
Okay.
Everybody give a hand for Josh Walton. He brought his axe today. All right, you got like the classic Jimmy Page tone, so look out. You're not going to get a violin bow out, are you? I mean, with the Les Paul, it'd be very appropriate. So, let's see. I was thinking, what I like to try to do is to play off of each other. And I'm putting you on the spot, but I know you're a great player. And the play off of each other is a great idea in improvisations where, and you're going to kill me if I'm putting you on the spot too much, right? I'll be gentle. But the play off of each other would be the idea of, like in a band context, and we'll talk more about band improv in a few minutes, but is where, you know, one member of the group might play a melody, and then the other member of the group might then either, you can imitate the same melody, or you can vary it. Maybe you'd play like a, in fact, I'll make this easy. I'll let you come up with the melody, and I'll do the antiphonal, okay? Antiphonal response, another big word you can use to impress your friends at those dinner parties. You know, ask them where the Grey Poupon is, and make sure your pinky's up, okay? But so what I'm going to do is we're going to do a little improv. I'll give us a chord progression on the looper, and then you're going to give me like a melody, you know, a thought, and then I'm either going to repeat it or I'm going to answer it, and we'll hear what that sounds like. It's not analyzed. Let's just do it, right? What do you say? What key you want?
Okay.
Got any preferences? Okay, let's just do E major. E major is the favorite key of every guitar player, right?
E minor is.
E minor, okay. And of course, if you watch Spinal Tap, what's the saddest chord of all? I just mentioned it, Spinal Tap earlier about turning a guitar up to 11. The saddest chord of all is D minor, according to the spandex hair guys. You know spandex hair guys, they gotta be right. Okay, so we're going to do E minor, okay? Which is not, it's the second saddest chord of all, okay? All right, hopefully you're in tune, right? Otherwise we'll call it jazz. Okay, let's see what we can do. What kind of do like a whole step mix, almost a Mixolydian thing, like, let's get the fret right. 3, 4. That was a weird note. Let me do it again. how it's more engaging if there's an interaction in the band, okay? And when we talk about band improvisation, I want to keep that in mind. I can't emphasize enough how you want to listen to the others. It's so easy, especially when you're insecure about improvisation, to get myopic and tunnel vision, and you're so concerned with, like I was saying earlier, we talked about the sources of inspiration, hearing good stuff in your head, right? Having those themes going, trying to translate that to your fingers. You're thinking music theory. With all that going, and you feel like a juggler, you forget, wait a second, I need to be listening to the others more than I need to be even focusing on myself. So that's very hard to do, right? Give you a little tip on that. I take this from Ravi Zacharias, okay? Ravi says so many great things. He said, there's 4 stages of learning: unconscious and competency. There's conscious competency. Then there's conscious competency. And then there's unconscious competency. You got that? It's a lot. Well, just those last 2, because we'll be here forever to go through all 4 of those. He's deep, right? Conscious competency, you got your game on, but you got to think about it. Okay? And when we're teaching you guys music, so often it's easy to get locked in that mode, and you think, man, I'm overwhelmed. There's all this stuff I got to think about. Well, you think about it in the practice room. But ultimately, and you think about it as you're growing, but that's not the destination. That's only the means of the destination. The more you do this, you get to that point where you stop having to think about it, and it becomes natural. So you move from conscious competency to unconscious competency, where it becomes second nature and natural. I was telling you earlier about the story about the worship leader that kept doing the thumbs up thing, on the half-step, modulations. When he first started doing that to me, oh gosh, I'm thinking, I had to think bipolar. I had to think chord letters and numbers, okay? So you got 2 things going on at once, and it's difficult, As you know, as worship leaders, you're going to have to multitask, so get used to it. It's not going to go away. It gets worse. But after a while of that dual mode thinking, I'm thinking, okay, I'm at the 1 chord, now I'm at the 6th chord, and what is that? It's a D flat, and then it goes to B flat minor, and oh no, you're lost. After a while, I got to the point where I got good at it, still had to think like that, and then I jumped to this next step where I'm like, whoa, I'm not thinking numbers anymore. And if I wasn't careful, I could almost forget about the number system at that point. Unfortunately, I teach, and I'm very analytical, so I'm not going to do that. But that's the goal, okay? So I know I'm giving you, a lot of things to think about and chew on. It's to help you grow, but you want to get to that point where you can now, instead of focusing on yourself, you're focusing on everyone else. That becomes very important as a worship leader, because as a worship leader, you got to have your game on so well that you can be, for instance, listening to the Spirit. What's God doing in this worship experience, in this worship time? How's the congregation reacting to the songs? What's the sound people doing? Why do we have a hum in the monitor? How come I can't hear the bass guitar? How come there's a violin that's flat, and how come the bass player's not on the right page, You got all these things you have to keep, going in your mind, so you're definitely juggling and you're multitasking. You don't need to also have to think about, what chord do I go next, and what's that number, etc. So it takes a lot of time. It doesn't happen overnight, but you get to this point where it all becomes natural. I want to say something about vocal improvisation. As I said, I don't want to leave the vocalists out, because there's so much that you can do with vocal improvisation. And I've done this. First of all, descants. Can somebody give me a definition of what a descant is? Anyone?
Kind of counter melody above, like maybe slower up above the.
You got it. And your name is?
Jonathan.
Hi, Jonathan. You're right. What style of music have you heard descants done in? Can you think of anything?
I know sometimes hymns, even they've got them written in over the melody.
Yeah. And urban gospel. In fact, just black music in general, you tend to hear, like Mariah Carey and Whitney Houston, that type of stuff. And in fact, some people get annoyed, they do the Star Spangled Banner, not lip syncing, or maybe they are, and they'll improvise, that last, the last note or whatever. But yeah, a descant is a form of improvisation. It doesn't have to. We don't have to be improvising a whole song from out of whole cloth. So, my voice is almost shot, as I said, but got a sore throat. But if I was trying to think of an example of a song I might do a descant over. Okay, you've probably heard this, I think they do it on the original of Here I Am to Worship, the last chorus. Normally the chorus of that song, you know, goes, here I am to worship, here I am to bow down, right? Here I am to say that you're my God. Okay, the last chorus, I will go up to a descant, which is really like a harmony. I'll go, here I am to worship, here I am to bow down, here I am to say that you're my God, you're altogether loving. So there's a descant, and it's improvisational more in nature. You've got to be careful about that as a worship leader because your congregation can get thrown off. My philosophy, and philosophy is very here, is just to make sure I have some worship team members strong on the melody, and maybe I'll do that descant, or if that throws them off, and I can have another worship team member do it, you know, but just preserve the melody too. And it might not throw your congregation off. It all depends on who your congregation is, you know. So that's one method of one type of improvisation you can do within the vocal context. Another thing you can do is you can sing syllables. And, you know, la, 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 right? I'm thinking David Crowder now. So you can, he likes to do that, doesn't he? So, if, you know, like if you're in a whole band context and maybe everybody's improvising and you're a vocalist and you want to contribute, you certainly can do that with some syllable singing, whether it's the la 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 thing or if it's more like a scat like you would hear in the jazz context. Let's see if I can just improvise something, and I'll give you some vocals with the la thing. If I'm in tune now. This thing doesn't like the cold, I don't think. Okay. Let's do a key of A, I guess. So, let's see. Up the melodies on the spot, and this is something you can practice in the mirror. You make sure you look good, make sure your hair's in place. No, you don't have to do it in the mirror, but this is something you can practice if you play an instrument also and sing. You know, you can practice it that way, or just turn the radio on and try to improvise some melodies. Because that's what I've done as a lead guitarist. Is I'll turn an MP3, CD, whatever, and I'll do my scales and improvise over top of that. There's no reason why you can't do that as a vocalist. Okay. If you play an instrument and you sing, that can be fun. You can do some scat stuff, and that, you know, you might do. I hear guys do this occasionally. Let me get another rhythm going, and then I'll demonstrate. I'll just vamp again. So, let's see. Okay. So I might do something like. To try to maybe combine that singing approach that we talked about earlier that helps train your ears, playing with the instrument also, and that doesn't come overnight. Last thing you can do, that I could think of at least, for improvisation within a vocal context, of course, is to make up words to the song, okay? And I've done this sometimes to my peril within worship context. Every once in a while, a song comes to my mind while I'm leading worship, and I do believe it's God, but you know, you got to be careful there. Some people say, "Oh, God gave me a song," and then you listen to it, and like, give it back to him. He's not done with it yet. So you got to be careful. But you know, a lot of times with the lyrics, or if I'm going to make up some lyrics, I'm going to try to do that now. Try to keep it worshipful. I got to admit, the lyrics will probably they're going to be simpler, not necessarily profound, a little cliched. Probably take them out of Scripture. Stuff like, you know, you are holy, you are mighty, you are worthy, you know, I love you, Lord. And, you know, the profound things to say to God. There's only so many ways to say those profound things, you know, unfortunately. But, you know, my point is my creativity for lyrical improvisation is going to be simple, and I think that's okay. I think there's an allowance there, okay? You don't have to be Bob Dylan with your lyrics or something, or whoever. So let's see what I can come up with. I can find a good key for me too. Need all the help I can get today. And really, one thing you can do to practice if you play and sing is to kind of pray during your practices, okay? And even playing through this chord progression, I'm kind of inspired, maybe just to lift up a prayer. So I think I'll do that. There's an example, and as I said, as I just started playing, there's an inspiration that can come, and when that comes, it's more magical. Okay, but as I said, lyrics are simple. Keep that in mind. If you're gonna do the improvisation with the vocals and you're playing with the group, don't think you have to fill in all the gaps and that you have to sing every portion of the music. I'm thinking of like some modern jazz and world music. Like, anybody heard of Pat Metheny? Pat Metheny, brilliant jazz guitarist, and he has a group called the Pat Metheny Group, or very original name, right? But in his stuff, you'll sometimes hear that syllable singing come out. But they use it like you would use a saxophone. If you remember seeing Springsteen at the Super Bowl, Clarence posing half the time, just standing there looking all cool, right? And then he'd get, his 30-second solo maybe, and then he'd sit back and let the rhythm instruments do their thing. And horn players get used to that. That might be what you want to, that might be the mindset to consider if you're going to especially do syllable singing with the group. You might come in with the Metheny tune and do that, that ah thing for a few bars, and then sit out and let there be, play with contrast. Guys, I've been talking a lot. Is there any questions up to this point?
Just a comment, Paul Belosh in his songwriting seminars talks a lot about even using scripture and just kind of praise it, /sings it, /says it, and uses that to inspire him a lot of times with songwriting.
It's a great way to memorize scripture.
Yeah.
One time, God gave me, here I go again, God gave me a song. Maybe it's a song only for me, but it was straight out of Psalm 27, verses like 4 through, 11, like in 10 minutes, and it's word for word King James, and I could never just sit down and write a song like that, but it became like a personal prayer in my own life, and sometimes I'll perform it for others, but it's probably just a song that God gave just me. But yeah, that'll happen, and that's a good point. It's a great way to memorize. It's a great way to memorize for tests. So if you have that formula you need to memorize, put the song. My grandmother's suffering with Alzheimer's, but the thing that she does not forget are song lyrics. Every Christmas, we're amazed. She can sing like 3 or 4 verses of Jingle Bells, and we thought there was only one. Or maybe she's been dipping in the eggnog and making stuff up. Maybe she's an improviser. No, she does it. So, there's really a power with memorization and singing, guys. There really is. Let's talk about improvising with the band now. Love improvising with the band. You can improvise song structure like we talked about earlier. Take a pre-written song, and improvising song structure, when I say that, I'm really thinking in terms of taking, like when as worship leaders, if you're like me, I keep things simple and I'll say, okay, most of the stuff I lead is going to be intro if there is one, verse, chorus. If there's a middle section, like a bridge, solo, we do that. And then usually I'll go 2 more choruses to end it. Some people go 1. And if I stick to that tried and true formula, yeah, it's a little predictable, I guess, but it really helps organization, okay? But there are times, like I mentioned that scenario at Ginghamsburg where the line was too long and we need to lengthen the song. But there are also times where, as I said, the Spirit is moving. Maybe a particular song that you're leading, you're noticing, man, there's a spirit of, in a congregation, repentance. This song is moving in hearts, and maybe you see people in tears or something, crying, and it's just moving people, okay? Well, you might want to stick to that song, okay? That's just a little clue stick, right? So, you might want to deviate from that plan and lengthen the song out. So, if you have, as a worship leader, or if you're the band leader even, if you have some pre-planned out, pre-communicated signals, then you can improvise the structure of a song. And what I usually use, and they differ for people, is I'll usually say there's the verse, there's the chorus, there's the ending. I do that for bridge. If I'm going to repeat a tag, repeat the ending, I'll do that. It looks like a Arsenio Hall, doesn't it? But no, that's repeating the tag of the song. And those signals help you to improvise the structure. But the other thing that you can do, it's even simpler approach, if people can understand what you're saying in the mic, is just to verbalize the first line of the song's chorus or whatever you want to go to. Now, I got myself into trouble with that one time. There's this song, it has this chorus, and the first few lines it goes, let's see, it goes, oh my God, you are my strength. They want to go on this, and my soul. Okay? So, I wanted to repeat that chorus, so I yelled out, oh my God! Don't do that. Learn from my mistakes, okay?
Some verses and chorus start with the same word.
What's that?
Some verses and chorus start with the same word. Like every day I've prompted that and I wanted to go to, and it didn't make a difference.
When you have to be very careful. Or hopefully it's a song like How Great Is Our God, because the chord progression's the same, so it doesn't matter, right? But the other thing is it helps to have all these signals pre-planned and worked out with your multimedia team as well, because it's really like, with multimedia, it's like steering a big ship. And it's probably the biggest deterrent for improvising song structure is that you got to make sure the PowerPoint or song show or whatever is in sync with you. But I try to practice that even with not just communicating it. Practice that with your multimedia people. You got volunteers, they're usually not paid, and they're happy to do it, but man, they don't want to take risks and put their neck on the line because they get blamed. It's like the sound guy. If things go wrong, they're blamed. Otherwise, they're invisible. And by the way, you want to make sure that you're always slipping a 20 to the sound people so that they keep you on, and make sure you're always giving those high praises and esteeming those people who support you, because the congregation aren't likely to do it, and it's not because the congregation's doesn't respect them. It's for that that reason that they're invisible and they do a good job. But I try to plan out all that with the multimedia team and practice improvisation of song structure. And using the signals really helps. One thing that's nice to do with improvising your song structure is to improvise the dynamics of the music. And what I usually do is I will just kind of give a motion like that to the group, and that tells them that we're lowering the dynamics, or I'll do that to bring up the dynamics. And that's really, if you have those that's a simple, subtle signal, If you have that going on with your group and they know how to react to that, it makes you a dynamic group. It makes you come alive, because otherwise it's easy to have this cookie cutter in the box style as a worship team, and everything you play is always sounding exactly the same, and things get old, they get moldy. So you can take a song and you vary it. There's nothing like we've all heard it done, where they take a song that's upbeat and they just mellow it out, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And maybe you crescendo the dynamics, and maybe that was planned, maybe you just throw your group a bunch of spontaneous improvisational signals, okay? Depends on how well you've trained that group. Beyond improvising the song structures, I want to talk to you about improvising more with the group. those songs from scratch, okay? There's two types of songs that you can improvise. You have your, what I would call an open-ended improvisation, which is really what I've been doing more of that, and we definitely did more of that. When I say open-ended improvisation, I'm speaking of where you have like a chord instrument, at least one, and that chord instrument is not defining, it's not doing a lot of complex stuff. You're not playing a lot of chords. A lot of times it's a vamp or the ostinato. You're leaving a lot of ambiguity in the music, and you're doing that purposefully. I'm going to give you an example, and this is it may be a little to the extreme, but it usually sounds good. What I'm going to do is I'm going to swell. Well, not a swell. I'll do like a sustain of just one note, and I'll pick E. Guitarists, we love E. It's my open string. So, and this part I'll play could be the bass player. And as I loop this E and it's going, again, it could be the bass player or whoever, I am going to come over top of the loop and I'm going to play melodies and lead parts. Maybe I'll even play some chords. And what you're going to find is because that underlying E is so vague, I have a freedom to do anything with it. So I'm going to be able to take it from minor to major and any of the modes I can think of. As I said, I can go into chords and arpeggios. I have a lot of freedom because they're not defining much of the song. They're leaving the definition, the defining of the song comes in the hands of the lead player. So let's see how that would sound. Get this thing going. Okay, there's my E. So what can I do with an E? Well, let's see. It always helps to have a delay on this guitar. I don't have a delay effect, but... I'm in E major so far. Here's E minor. Pretty much pentatonic. So I really bluesed it up there. Kind of gave it a little feel. Hit a chord, maybe make a little jazzy sound. That's a Jimi Hendrix chord, by the way, Foxy Lady. Oh, wait, I'm not supposed to play that here. Okay, Purple Haze. Oh, I can't play Purple Haze either. I'm in trouble. If the last chord of Visual Mountains, you are good. There we go. We sanctified it, okay? You are good, right? Okay. An E minor, do E Dorian maybe? The more I can play around with building the dynamics, and it's hard when you just got two, the better. But let's see if I can get some dynamics going, like do maybe a melodic ascent, okay? That's a descent, but we'll move it. Turned it into a blues thing. You got all that freedom because whoever's playing with me is not laying down much. That droning E could, as I said, could have been the bass player. You could be playing with another keyboard, and those keyboard players could, like if you got a synthesizer and you're playing the pads, you can play the first and fifth notes, for instance, of the chord. And guitars do that all the time, and it's called a power chord. And that chord is ambiguous. It has no third in it, so it can be major, it can be minor, and it can be suspended, and of course all the color chords that I can imply with that. So lots of freedom in that style of improv. I'm going to play you an MP3 of, I'm conscious of time, I'll make sure I don't go too long. I'm going to show you an MP3 of a improv that is of that style. And but what I'm going to show you is Phil Keggy. He has an album called Jammed, and it's primarily an improvisational album. it's electric guitar stuff for him. He also does has an acoustic improv album called Sketches. So if you're into his acoustic stuff and want to hear him improvise, that's a good one to check out too. And this one I want to play, as I said, it's very loose structure with the band. You're going to hear a band on here, but and that's on the track. A lot of cool stuff on here. Sherlock Holmes is the name of this. Oh wait, that's George. That's not it. Come on, the other one. Oh no, this is called Electric. Okay. It's just a vamp. Okay, kind of faded in. Kind of doing a minor blues thing. And the bass player is settling into one note. That's the tonal center. Let's find that note. He's on A. And he's going a whole step. That's all he's doing. Or she. It could be a female. It's not discriminating. And whatever that bass player is doing, they just leaving a lot of holes in there for Phil to take over. Come on, Phil. Show us what you got. That Jimi Hendrix chord I hit earlier, so it is sanctified. What I call loose improv, open-ended. And what makes it's a challenge to make this interesting, because you have to be creative with dynamics, with tones. You got to use other techniques. I was trying to do it with scales. He's not doing it as much with scales. When I do it with scales, they have a jazz sound sometimes. Sometimes you don't want that. I've been studying a lot of jazz, so it keeps coming out of me. I'm sorry if that's not your thing. Everything here, though, A. Okay? And he's flirting between major and minor, as I said. So that's one method of improv. There's advantages and disadvantages, as we've discussed. It's simpler, it's easier to follow. It's at the same time that challenge is to make it interesting. The second type of improv, I would just say, is more detailed improvisation. And a more detailed improvisation, the way I do this a lot, is thinking the national number system. And I say that, how many of you know the number system? Show of hands. So, yeah, something that's kind of weird or foreign, right? It's basically a system of music theory that tells you patterns of what chords we're going to keep. And really quick, this is very quick. But like in the key of C, with 3-note chords, there's a pattern. And I can find that pattern if I think of these in terms of numbers. Since I'm in the key of C, I'm going to call that C chord the 1 chord. So whatever the D chord is will be 2, and we'll work up from there, right? In the key of C, the 1 chord's major. The 2nd and 3rd chord are minor, okay? 4 and 5 are major. 6 is minor. And 7's diminished, although I never teach that way. I always say play the 5 chord with the 7 bass, but don't worry if that went over your head. The point is, you got 7 notes, or 7 chords within a given key, okay? It gets more complicated if you get the big chords, but we don't have to do that necessarily. With those in mind, if somebody knows that, if your band knows that, what you can do is you can give them signals. What I do with a band in that context, I have a bass player who knows this number system very well. In fact, so well, he doesn't like to do the multitasking thing. If I give him a chord chart with letters, he translates it into numbers. And he doesn't like the letters at all. It's a distraction to him. But what I'll do with him and other guys I improvise with is we might be playing and I'll just start getting number signals by hand. And what I will do is, so we can deviate from the pattern, like 2 chord, the pattern says 2 chords are minor. But I can make them major if I want to deviate. So what I will do, all my minor chords I'll point down. So 2 and 3, if they're minor, I said point down, I'll point to the side. So if they're minor, I'll do like that. And if I want them to play a 2 chord as a major, I'll point it up. So he even knows the type of chord that I'm going for. What about 6 and 7? Well, if I'm hanging on a guitar or whatever instrument, I don't have 2 hands to be free. So for 6 and 7, I'll curve my finger. And again, that's a 6 major. There's a 6 minor. And then there's a 7 chord. What I do for 7 is kind of different. If you know your music theory, this will make sense. Otherwise, don't worry about it at this point. But for 7, what I'll do is if I aim down, it means play the 5 chord with the 7 bass, which is typical in worship music. If I do it up, what I mean is go a whole step below your key. So if I'm in a key of C, a whole step's B flat, play a major chord. I always call it the flat 7 chord as a major. Okay? So, see some of you nodding your heads, that's good. So that signaling system, you got to have trained musicians to do it, but it can be very effective. Now, some of you play piano, and then I have at least one guitarist here. I'm wondering if any of you would be brave souls and want to volunteer with a show of hands to come up and improvise piano, guitar, and drums. Oh, he left, didn't he?
Right. Exactly.
You play drums too? Okay. Maybe we could do a little improvisation with this signaling system. Anybody interested? Drummers don't have to worry about it.
5 minutes.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll keep it under 5. Josh, are you comfortable with the number system to do that? Okay. Any keyboard players want to do that? Or another guitarist. Another guitarist can play my guitar and I can do the piano. So either way. So another guitarist or keyboard player that wants to do it, you got to be comfortable with number system. Is that it?
Daniel, come on.
Damn.
Okay. What do you play, Daniel?
Keyword.
Come on up. Cool, cool. Like we'll pick a key of your choosing. Daniel, since you were hesitant, let's pick the key. What key you want? Not that one. No, we can't do that one.
C flat.
Well, that's going to be a problem for me.
Yeah, that's going to be a problem for the drummer, okay? So,
Something D.
you know the number system then?
I guess.
Let's go over the signals. We'll go over the signals one more time.
I can't see
So-
your key, but yeah.
Yeah, that's always a trick. You got to make sure you're positioned in a good place where everybody can see. But there's the 1 chord, that's major. 2 minor, 3 minor. Like, you know what? You're gonna have a hard time singing if I go down.
Put out in front of you.
Yeah. Okay. I feel like a traffic cop. Come on, hands right here. Okay. So yeah, 2 and 3 minor down. There's 2 and 3 major up. So up's major, down's minor, and you know. The big trick is the 7s, and maybe I won't throw that out at you. If I give you a 7, then just do the 5 chord and the 7 bass. Comfortable with that? All right. So let's pick the key of C major. What do you think? All white keys?
Oh, okay.
Simple? All right. So now before we start to improvise, it helps for us to kind of think, what do we want to communicate as far as motif? I mean, classify music in terms of fast and slow, for instance. Let's let them decide. Do you guys want us to improvise something that's more up-tempo, or maybe a ballad, you know, maybe you're feeling romantic? What? Do both at the same time? We could do like punk country. You ever do that? I don't recommend that.
Wow.
And don't do country and rap mixed together. That's called rap. So who wants us to do, let's see, upbeat or slow? Upbeat? Yeah, I agree. Let's make it fun. Okay, so what's a good upbeat tempo for us? Oh yeah, okay. C major. I had to brain fart for a second because here I'm signaling you, but if you're playing lead, it doesn't matter. So
Well, I need to keep in mind.
yeah. When you're playing chords, it's going to matter more.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, it helps. It helps to know if I'm going to G. For the most part, I want to signal my chord instrument. Okay? So, and what we were doing right there, we were going to vamp between the 6 minor and the 2 minor chord. Okay. So, that would give you a place to take a solo, and then we'll move out of that. Are you comfortable with leads? With taking a solo too? Okay,
So
then
just
we'll do
review,
that
what's
also.
your hand signal for stop?
What's
I
that?
thought you were changing a chord, so I was like, oh, you want me to stop?
Yeah. Not yet. So we'll do that for the stop thing. So let's take it again. We're doing the 6 minor and the 2 major. 1, 2, 3, 4. Challenge. Good job, guys. Good job. Give them all a hand. Give them all a hand. Good job. As you can see, that's very challenging, especially to play an instrument and to signal at the same time. Okay, so I don't recommend that for the people at heart. The advantage, I think, it makes more interesting improvisations if you can do that. You want to train your group, okay, to improvise. And what I recommend is worship leaders. Hey, thanks. Nice playing with you. One thing that helps when you're improvising is I would make a conscious effort as a worship leader to take some time in your band practices and your worship team practices to rehearse your groups through jam sessions, okay? What we used to do at one church I went to was we'd have a monthly jam session. We actually used it as an evangelistic outreach also. We invited anybody from the community who want to come out. But that's a good form, or just make it a part, like the last 10 minutes of every weekly band practice that you're doing, just to do some improvisation, or at least to get them trained with improvising the song structure so you can be a little flexible during the worship service. Because you don't want to just throw this out on them without rehearsing people through it, because there's a psychology to this music. I mean, you got to have confidence and be a little bit of a risk taker. In fact, improvisation in general can be intimidating because you put your neck on the line, don't you? So you got to keep that in mind and try to make your people feel comfortable by rehearsing them. The last type of improv I want to talk about is the blues. Okay, there's the typical 12-bar blues progression. I'm surprised how many musicians don't know how to play the blues, so I wanted to make sure I go through this a little bit. Because to me, in my ears, and I'm not a huge blues fanatic, but to my ears, blues chord progressions are so predictable that anybody should be able to, most part, be able to participate in a blues jam. And you'll see around the Dayton area, for instance, that there are certain venues that have open blues jams because of the nature of it. I wrote out, and it's hard to see because I didn't want to erase anything on this blackboard, but I wrote out a typical 12-bar blues chord progression. in the number system. So for those of you who are not familiar with it, then like if I'm in the key of C, then that one chord is a C chord. Okay, and there's the 4, so that'd be an F. By the way, I'm writing it in Roman numerals because the way we do the number system is you typically have capitals for major chords and you do lowercase for minor. You'll notice that all these chords are major chords, which is very common in the blues genre. But the lines here are bars or measures. Okay, so if you're in a typical 4/4, common time beat, then that's you can see that this is a matrix of 4 by 3, and that's why we call it 12-bar blues. This is such a common chord progression, and I'll play it for you in a second. Hound Dog is the Elvis song, which was originally a blues tune, and he redid it, and this is the chord progression for that. Stevie Ray Vaughan redid a song called "The Sky Is Crying," became a classic blues tune, exactly the same chord progression. It was a Cream song, I can't remember, exactly the same chord progression. So it's all over the place. At the end, I wrote down here, when you get to the 5 chord at the end, there's something that you can incorporate that the blues player would call a turnaround, okay? Turnaround, I'll show you what that would sound like. Piano, it kind of has a honky-tonk sound. You get like the key of C, the 5 chord is G. Okay, I go to the G, and you'll hear something like this. Let's see. Something like that. And then, wait, I did that on the wrong chord. Key of C. Yeah, again, it'd be like a. Okay, that would be a turnaround. Okay, I'm slopping it up, but that's the idea. Let me do that again. So, there's certain cliche, they're almost cliche because you hear them all the time within the genre of the blues. I'll do it and you'll hear it when I get to the tail end of that. So I'll improvise for you that chord progression. Most of you will say, yeah, I've heard that. Where's my volume? How it helps if I plug in. Alright. So I'll do improv in the key of, let's do G. So I'm going to play all those chords. I'm going to make dominant sevenths, which is a violation of music theory. Okay? Okay, so that means somebody's going to come and arrest me, right? And really, if you, like at that level, what I just wrote out, it's very simple music theory. But if you make all those chords dominant sevenths, it's complicated because they're all 5 to 5s, you know what I mean? Like that first chord is G7, I'm technically in a key of C. I go to the F7, I'm technically in a key of B flat. It keeps changing, there's a key change for every chord. Don't worry, blues players don't do that. They don't think like that. They say, forget it, pentatonic over everything, okay? Blues, if you learn music theory too much, you lose the blues, is what they say. So what you got to do instead is you got to have like an alcohol and drug problem, and don't do that either to get the blues, right? No, I say there's a sanctity. Just learn a dominant 7th chord or 9th chord. You got it. You don't have to go through all that mess, right? So, all right, 1, 4, 5 in the key. That 12-bar blues in the key of G would be 2, 3, 4. There's the 1 chord. There's the 4 chord on that 2nd bar. There's the 1 chord. The 2nd measure. Okay, I'm on the 2nd line. The 4 chord. I'm kind of sliding into the 4 chord. You can hear. That's forgivable in the blues. Okay, here it comes back to 1 chord. Okay, I'm going to the 5 chord on the 3rd line. Kind of slide into it like the slides. 4. There's the 1. Sky is Crying. That's Hound Dog at a different tempo. So that's the 12-bar blues. Would any of you want to come up and do some improv on the 12-bar blues?
Bradley does.
What do you play?
Guitar.
Okay, cool. Come on up. You can play mine if you want, or you can play, or I don't know if Josh wants to loan his. Either way.
You want to play his.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead. It's dual humbuckers. They split if you pull them out, or you can go for the rock sound if you pull them in. I don't know if you like the pick. It's weird. Who else? Cool. Who else wants to come up and do? And here's a chord chart right here if you don't want to look over there.
Come on, Brad.
Anybody else? All right. Come on up. Are you going to be comfortable with those chords? Looking either over there. You play blues a lot? Oh, okay. He's fine. Great, great. Drums? Any drummers?
I can.
You can hack it? Okay. And then a guitarist? No?
Come on, Tom.
Who plays guitar? Somebody hiding? We got a sleeper over here? You comfortable playing? You can try to play him down and play the sound guy. Right? Come on up. What do you want to do the blues in? What key? You know, yeah, I know you know.
E's an easy key.
E? Man, piano E. Alright, cool. E for blues.
Yeah, okay.
Now, as we do this, if we're all playing leads, of course, drums excluded, you're all playing leads or you're all playing rhythm, either way, it's going to be a train wreck, okay? So, you kind of want to have some communication going on. You can pre-plan this stuff too. I haven't mentioned that, but you know, you can pre-plan improvisations. You can certainly say, okay guys, we're going to improvise the 12-bar blues or a 3-6-2-5-1 chord progression, okay? In the key of C. Have fun. You guys ever seen Back to the Future?
Yeah.
First one? Remember when Michael J. Fox gets on stage and he says the band in the key of B flat, 1-4-5, try to keep up? Well, you can kind of do that. I would recommend not. Maybe don't do the try to keep up thing, but yeah. One thing we could do is we could each take like you could play a solo for 4 bars, and you could play a solo for 4 bars, and then are you comfortable? Are you guys both comfortable with solos or rhythm? Are you a rhythm guy or you comfortable with solos?
I'll do solo, yeah.
Cool. All right. You want to take drum solo, or are you too much more of a hat?
I could, but why bother? Everyone knows about drum improv.
All right. So why don't we try 12-bar blues? I hope 4 bars isn't too short. It works out because there's 3 of you. So let's see. Try. You do a solo for 4. You do a solo for 4, and then you do a solo for 4. Okay? We'll see how that works. What do you think? Like it? All right. And then we need to designate one guy as being a band leader to end the song. Who wants to be? Who's a band leader? Who's got a leadership?
No, I was just asking, wait, I missed the thing you were saying. Solos?
Yeah, we're going to do...
I mean, just sounding.
Like you'll solo for 4, you'll solo for 4, then you'll solo for 4 measures. So that's 4 times 4, 16 beats.
Well, in this
Is that cool?
situation where I just let him do the rhythm and I just got to hang back into my solo, or it just
Yes,
kind
yes.
of embellishment.
Yeah, you would hang back and play the rhythms, try to embellish a little bit. Yeah, try not to step over other people's parts, you know. If one guy's, takes more time, but one person's chords are low, you might want to play higher, or you might want to contrast your rhythms. Don't get perfect, it's okay. No pressure, we're amongst friends, right? We don't have any thing to throw at them, do we? No, so you're fine. You're fine, okay?
I'll run through it once.
Yeah, let's do it. Good idea. Let's all run through the chord progression the first time, and then we'll rotate the solos the second time around. Cool? All right. Well, first time to the chord. So count us off. The chord progression. me thirsty or something, you know? And I don't drink, so I'm thirsty for, you know, a little chocolate cannon here, okay? Let's try it again. And you guys sounded great. The one thing I want you to be more conscious of is the number of measures that we have for each chord. That way we can stay together. So, you know, you guys, if you can look at the board, or you can shoulder surf over here on the computer if you want. But we're basically following, you know, each bar is 4 beats. Cool? So let's try to do it again. That way we're in sync. One time through the chords, and if we nail that, the next time through, rotate the solos. Try it again, guys. Count us off. Too short for solos, 4 bars each, okay? So, I don't think we're going to be too long to say. Why don't we go through 12 bars of solo? Cool?
Do the full thing.
Yeah, yeah. So let's do the whole thing, 12 bars of solo.
Go through it 4 times, first time without solos.
First time without, we'll do 3 solos and call it a day. Alright, count us off one more time. Trying to make sure you start it. Well, the starting wasn't much of a challenge, but ending it definitively, so that everybody ends in the same place, you know. Part of that key is just to have somebody definitively leading, you know. And that's something I haven't mentioned. Good job, excellent, lovely to your playing. Something I haven't mentioned in the band context is, you know, you need somebody who's a leader, who takes the chain thing runs. Yeah, we're about out of time. Is there any other questions about anything we went over? Anything we didn't cover?
I was just curious, especially with dealing with the blues and stuff like that. Improvising, I know you said you use pentatonics. Would you, like, I know there's like about 3 or 4 different ways that people highly advise, and that's like between pentatonics, doing modality, and then also like using blues scales. So would you say it's situational, like which type you'd use there, or is there one you prefer to the other?
When you said there's certain modalities.
Well, just like using different modes over different chords. Like if you had a 5, you might use mixolydian.
Yeah.
Instead of just So
right.
would you prefer that, or would you say that one's better over the other?
If you're going to play straight blues, as I said, blues players keep it simple. And they play one scale for the entire key. They don't even think in terms of modes, okay? So they would just blow through a pentatonic. It would be blasphemy to say the hexatonic scale, but technically the blues scale has 6 notes and you call it hexatonic. But anyhow, they would just play straight through one scale, is the way most blues players do. If you want to get a little more creative with the blues, which I'd love to hear, I'd probably like the style better if I heard a little less cliches and a little more creativity. Then I might direct you to start thinking in those terms of modes. One thing, for instance, I like to do is throw a Dorian in the sharp 6 of my key. So I'm in the key of E, and I don't even say E major or E minor. I mean, it's blues plays the mode out with the tonality. The chord progression's E major, although it's a dominant chord. All those are dominant 7s, which are major chords. But the scale is E minor, you know? The blue note, or one note that they'll add, bends that 3rd, which defines the scale as minor. They'll play the major 3rd. They'll throw it in there. A quick demo would be like a blues chord of an E dominant, and there's that G sharp is defining it as major, and a soloist might do, and when I'm bending it from minor to major, and it has that bluesy sound. Okay, so the blues will flirt back and forth between minor and major, and blues guys, again, they do it instinctively, intuitively. They don't analyze it. That sharp 6 note I talked about adding would be, you see, 1, 2, we're going to think about it on piano, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's the 6. I would sharpen, wait a second, am I counting right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, I play like a C sharp, and I'm thinking E minor a lot of times. So if I play my E minor pentatonic, but add that sharp 6 in there occasionally, it's going to stretch it out a little bit more, and I get kind of a, that thing going on there. It's starting to sound jazzy, and that's another thing. You start to stretch your thinking, and with blues, you get into jazzy sounds. There's a guitarist by the name of Scott Henderson. You know who he is? Yeah, he's brilliant at. He's a fusion jazz guy, and his phrasing is bluesy. His tones are bluesy, but he plays the jazz, has the jazz scale thought to it. So he kind of combines the both. So he'd be a good reference to try to, if you want to take blues to the next level. Listen, there's a lot of theory to it, but at the same time, the blues players just chuck it all out the window. So, good question, good question. What else?
You mentioned your looper in worship. How else do you use it besides catching your headset?
I'll use it whenever I'm the only musician. I have a philosophy that as a worship leader, you build it and it'll come, like the Field of Dreams, right? Sometimes I've been leading worship at churches that had no musicians. And what I would do is use the looper to add more rhythm, not only for the solo thing you heard, I will do it for leaders. So if the song was, try to give a quick example, Trading My Sorrows. If I was doing, let me move it. I'm leading this song, I might go like this. I'm trading my sorrow. I'm trading my shame. wouldn't stop. So there would be an example where I might do layers, and it also freed me up if I want to lay those fills in. Being that I've studied lead so long, I relish being able to add some fills to this music anyhow, so the looper frees me up to do that. So that's a great example. Talking about build it and they will come, briefly, I've used MIDI sequencing also to make a small group sound much bigger. Ableton Live is a great looping software that you can do a lot of things. You can trigger different structures of a song by hitting, like on a synthesizer, you could designate a real high E flat note to not give it the pitch of E flat. Instead, you hit it and it would trigger a loop. Like maybe you have it trigger a, could be a sample like you'd hear in David Crowder or something, like a guy doing the, what do they do at the turntable, you know, if you want to be cutting edge. Or it could be, you know, like I don't know, God forbid, a cowbell. No, let's not do that. But yeah, whatever. You can, you know, so you can be very creative with the loops and just make yourself sound bigger. And what I found philosophically from that is that you sound bigger than you are because you're being smart about technology, and you can attract musicians because you'll create a buzz. People will come and check it out and say what's up, and they'll want to get involved, and you'll get live people to fill in that gaps. And that's happened to me 2 times in a row. Leading worship, I was at 2 churches that were back to back that had that problem of a small talent pool, and both of them I was able to grow it by those techniques. So the looper and MIDI sequencing, if you can learn how to do that. Drum machines, I've done a lot of leading worship with drum machines. I have a sequencer for my drum machine where I can program the drum machine to act like a drummer, and that's a lot of work, but you can do that. And I will do it, especially because it adds emotion, because the dynamics, the drums are so dynamic, and that's often missed. But what I'll do more often than not, because I'm lazy and I'm part-time, I'm a bivocationalist, is I will just loop the drums instead. If I'm going to loop them, I don't want to go for acoustic drum sounds. I want it to sound like an R&B kit or something, you know, so a hip-hop kit. So I will choose those sounds, and I usually have like one little foot switch that turns it on and off, and that's it. And that way, I'm also not stuck to the structure of the song. The real hang-up, if you program that drums like a drummer, is you are stuck on, make that intro 4 bars. No more, no less, and, you know, don't deviate anywhere. You know, all those instrumental breaks, if you have them, got to be dead on. So I'd rather use a drum machine looping if I have to go that route. Of course, a real drummer is always better than anything. Every once in a while, I'll have a real drummer and use a drum machine too. That's a really cool idea. Sometimes we would throw in like this, we'd say, like on Here I Am to Worship, that verse, we might do a hip-hop, you know, nothing inappropriate, but although some people, you say hip-hop, you're already out the door. But, you know, you do like this R&B type of thing, it's really mellow light on the verse, and I tell my drummer, hang out, don't do anything until the chorus. And on the chorus, I kick the drum machine off, the drummer comes in, it's a great dynamic trick to really give a contrast. So, anything else, guys?
What drum machine do you use?
Got a Boss DR770, but it's kind of a pain to program. Lisa's makes a nice one for only $100.
I have 2 others. They're really nice.
That SR16?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. There's so many out there. And nowadays you can do a lot of it on laptop. I mean, eventually, maybe you guys already dabble, but there's soft synthesizers, you know, where instead of having a synthesizer like we think of one traditionally, you just kind of have your keyboard plugged into your laptop, and that laptop has all the sounds you need for that. And guitars go in the same direction if you want. You got all these amps inside of the laptop. Technology is just, it's hard to keep up in it. So, anything else, guys? Gave a lot of material, didn't I? If you want to stick around with any other questions, feel free to. Doctor, will you close us in prayer?
Sure. Lord, thank you for the opportunity we've had just to study, and thank you for Greg and for his life and ministry. Pray you'd help us be able to take these things and be able to stretch our musicianship and to further your kingdom. We pray. Amen.
Thanks for
Thanks,
coming,
Greg.
guys. Nice to have you.